My name is Micah Robinson. I'll be hosting our discussion for today, and we're here for the webinar, The RevOps Difference, How Alignment and Customer Centricity Supercharge Enterprise Revenue. Now, before we go any further, just a little bit of housekeeping. If you have questions, since we won't have mics on during the discussion, everyone will be muted. Please feel free to put them in the chat, and we've allotted a good amount of time to get to them. So please be confident that whatever you put in there, we'll make time to address today, and really looking forward to that. We'll also have a poll. So just be thinking about that as we go through the discussion. And we really encourage interaction here, so we're looking forward to seeing our responses there. Finally, the recording and slides for today will be available about 48 hours after our session today. So if you feel like you missed anything or want to do a deeper dive or a rewind, no worries. We'll have the materials to you so that you can enjoy in perpetuity. And with that, I'm very excited to introduce our speakers today. First up, we have Dr. Debbie Gagish, Partner and Chief Strategy Officer at the Pedowitz Group. Dr. Debbie's published 2 books, From Backroom to Boardroom and The Rise of the Revenue Marketer. Is very much a thought leader in revenue operations. So super excited to have Dr. Debbie with us on this call today.
Pleasure to be here, Micah.
Oh, thank you. And we also have Todd Leba. He is the CEO of Ascend2, a leading partner for companies looking to create original research in the enterprise landscape. And thank you for joining us today, Todd.
Thank you, Micah, and thank you, Dr. Debbie.
Excellent. Well, we want to make the most of our time here, so I will hand the proceedings over to Dr. Debbie to take a look at our agenda and get us kicked off.
Thank you, Micah. I appreciate that. So let's bring up the agenda if we can. One more. There you go. Okay. So when we were putting this webinar together, it was really hard to come up with an agenda because there were so many findings in this report. But I think that what we have netted out will be the most value for everybody that's listening and watching. We will have a getting to know you poll. We had one relevant question in the survey, and we're going to ask you the same question. We'll talk about why RevOps, what's going on in the market that makes this a hot topic, and it is a beyond hot topic. We'll talk about the background of the report and how we put that together. Todd and I will present 2 key findings, one around alignment and one around employee engagement. And that's just 2 of many, many findings in the report. And then we'll talk, we want your questions, so be very active. Every question you ask, as Micah mentioned, we will get to. And then, of course, we have some next steps. Did I miss anything, Todd?
No, I think we have more than enough to cover today. I'm excited.
Fantastic. All right, well, let's go. And we want to begin with a poll question. So here's the poll question. When you think about alignment, how aligned are you on the efforts, strategies, and goals of marketing, sales, and customer success teams at your organization? Would you say you're partially aligned, mostly aligned, or fully aligned? So 67% of you said you're partially aligned, 0%, and we had 33% fully aligned. And I'm going to applaud you folks. That's really an incredibly high number to be fully aligned. So thank you for those responses. And we will come back and revisit this as we go through the other findings in the study. So we can move forward.
Remember that 33% fully aligned number, because that'll come into play here soon.
Yes, it will. It will. And I think, also the topic of the webinar begs people to come in who are already doing it. So I think that's great. All right, so let's talk about why RevOps. Let's talk about what's going on with RevOps and why is this relevant right now. So if we can go to the next slide. Okay, so let me give you a working definition. And RevOps, as I mentioned, is a very hot topic, but it means different things to different people. In some organizations, RevOps is a new name for sales operations. That is not what we are talking about here. We're talking about something very different. So RevOps is the end-to-end business process of driving predictable revenue through a functional alignment of the marketing, sales, and customer success functions. It is not just about sales operations. And the companies that we'll be talking about today, the stories that we're sharing and the data keeps that definition in mind. And when we work with successful RevOps organizations, we see that it's all about driving revenue predictability that accelerates growth by getting that one view of the customer and having all of that supported through an integrated data and MarTech stack. And then and only then do you get that improved efficiency and predictability across the revenue process. RevOps really recognizes that, hey, there's a new way to create revenue. It is not just about sales and feet on the street. In an ever increasingly digital world that we live in, where the customer's in firm control, it takes all the customer facing parts of the organization working together to make the most of that customer experience that then drives revenue. So that'll be our working definition as we go through the session today. And so why now? No, again, that's a great question. I gave a little bit of it away. So first of all, we know, and the pandemic certainly accelerated all of this, that customer experience is now a competitive differentiator. And you'll see that in the results. It comes up over and over and over again. Tech profusion and a digital world, business models are changing. How as B2B organizations we respond to the market is changing because of this tech profusion, both for us as companies and also for our customers and our consumers. Also, boards are now looking for more business predictability. The romance time, the honeymoon phase with technology is over. And what these boards now want to see is some business predictability as a result of investing in all of these technologies, excuse me, especially from marketing and sales. And also, in today's world, revenue is a team sport. You cannot have a sales process or a customer journey process that is 70, 80% digital and not have other parts of the organization involved in that, especially marketing. So it takes all the customer facing elements. Customers have very high expectations, so it takes marketing, it takes sales, and it takes customer success. So those are some of the drivers in the market right now. What would you add to that, Todd?
You know, one of the things that we've seen over the last year to two in a variety of research studies that we've done, where that customer experience and that goal of teams trying to improve customer experience has been really moving up to like pretty much the #1 objective that we see with companies. And so, you know, that always then begs the question of how, right? How do you improve customer experience? And our research findings, what we're going to share today, but also, you know, other ones we've done is, you know, it's a complex topic, but it does start with alignment within the company.
Yes.
So you can't make the customer's experience seamless and valuable until you get some of these alignment issues and really have the strategy in place to make it happen.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Okay, next slide. So one of the things that you know, we're really big on is not just the research that we have, right, Todd? Not just having one source. And so we scoured the market to take a look at other research projects and other results. And we've pulled just a handful of key metrics for you. In the appendix, there will be a complete list of all of these links so that you can go see that. But we broke it down to benefits of all key stakeholders, benefits to marketing, benefits to sales, benefits to the customer, benefits to the employee, and benefits to the company. Things like 100 to 200% increase in digital marketing ROI. That's from Boston Consulting Group. I mean, that's just a huge number. Or 10 to 20% increase in sales productivity. Or for the customer, 50 to 20% in internal customer satisfaction from Forrester. mean, those are stunning numbers when you think about it. And so Gartner also predicts that 75% of highest growth companies in the world will deploy a RevOps model by 2025. So there are a lot of very smart people who are looking at the market, taking a look at what's happening, and these are based on things that are already in flight right now. Todd, why don't you talk about the benefits to the employees and benefits to the company?
Sure. You know, at Ascend2, we do, over the last 2 years, we've done like over 100 research studies, thousands of data points. But, you know, we're not alone. So like when Dr. Debbie, when we started doing this one and looking for something unique in the industry as far as research, you know, it was really comforting to know how much is already out there and how much is available. You know, we're not speaking in our own little island that nobody else is interested in. You know, this is a very important topic, and you can see from these research data points that companies are really identifying RevOps as a key opportunity for future growth. And so that was, you know, a little bit of what this told me, and how it, you know, customer experience, employee experience, how you know, engage in your marketing and sales and customer success, like all these things, you know, come together in this topic. So, you know, these research data points really allow us to kind of formulate our strategy and then present that to our executive team. You know, so you're not going in alone and kind of saying, I want to do this without any data to support what you're trying to accomplish. So there's a lot out there. We're going to share a lot from our study today, but it really does assist you in whatever department you're in to identify and make that plan.
That's right. And again, our second finding is all about employee engagement, which links to this benefits to employees, and that's career progression, which is extraordinarily important in the tech world. And then finally, benefits to the company. I mean, if I'm a CEO or if I'm a board member, you know, and if I knew that I could do something that I could grow revenue faster than my competition, then I would want to do that. So again, to Todd's point, there are, I think I counted up like 36 different data points that'll be in the appendix. And then, so we're not coming into a vacuum of research. There's already a lot of research out there, but we are going to talk about what is unique about our research. So why don't we go to the next slide?
Sure. And I can talk a little bit about the methodology that we incorporated. One is, this is very current. We just did this in March of this year. And, you know, we're really pleased, Dr. Debbie, because we had over 500 participants to this research study. And what made it unique is the fact that we got, you know, a really equal amount of marketing, sales, and customer success professionals. And Dr. Debbie, I think you and I first met back when I was doing research with Marketing Sherpa, and now founded Ascend2. So it goes back a ways. And, you know, there's been a lot of research on marketing and sales alignment, but not really any out there that brings in customer success. And so that is one area that I thought was really unique about this study. So we could kind of see what's going on, you know, overall, but then within each department. So there were some very interesting findings there.
Yeah. And again, that is significant because, again, our working definition includes all three elements: marketing, customer success, and sales. And so even our breakdown, it was almost like a third between marketing, customer success, and sales. And it gives us kind of like a more intimate view of what's happening, because, you know, it's like they're all thinking about how the three of those organizations work together versus just one at a time. So it is a unique study. I do believe it is groundbreaking in a lot of ways. And we just had a really great response to that. We had a great breakdown on roles between the different levels, and also even on annual revenue. There was a very nice breakdown there as well.
There was,
so that's
and you know,
what you want out of a study, right, Todd?
It was, you know, and it's also important that these are all B2B companies.
Yes.
So I think that's really important and unique. And then also you mentioned the size of the companies. You know, this is primarily an enterprise level study. So, you know, as you're looking at the data, if you fall in that category, I think the one benefit is these are all similar companies. So a lot of these companies have already maybe walked in the path you're looking to walk in, or they're going through the process, and you can kind of learn from each other.
That's right. That's exactly right. All right. So that's the methodology and the participants. Let's get into some findings, shall we? Oh, first, Todd, let's talk about this growth segment. Why don't you tell us about that?
Let's do that. So we always try to, in our research, we always try to find different ways we can segment the data. And so as our data scientists were looking at this study, the one thing that jumped out was we were able to pull out a group of people that said they were far exceeded their revenue growth in 2021. So these were ones that, that we all aspire to, right? We could go into our CFO and say, look, we've far exceeded our goals for this year in revenue. And so we pulled those people out because, the one great thing I think here is the fact that, let's try to do what they've already done to get success. And, it kind of broke out. And my thought was, as you look at these and throughout the report, you'll see where we pull this group out and we kind of look and see how maybe they see things a little bit differently than the other companies. And so that's pretty fascinating. And we see this. I'm not going to read all of these because you can see them on your screen, but the fact that, the first one of 48%, this really is what I would call the alignments. These groups that are exceeding their revenue goals are fully aligned, much more than the average group. So the average group was 29%, this group's 48%. So you can see full alignment, critical. I thought the next one, the 56%, this is really I think predictability of growth.
Yep.
So this group's saying we did it last year and they're equally confident, and we know that obviously this year, 2022 has some new challenges than the previous year, yet they're still very confident. And so it goes to that aspect of predictability. The 88%, you can see in this group that customer experience is extremely important. And they put a higher emphasis on customer experience and a very tangible ways of how they're going to accomplish that. And then the 75%, I think this really shows how they understand how all this has to happen under the umbrella of the financial team and the having that engagement and understanding and communication with the financial team. So these are some of the things, Dr. Debbie, that we saw when our analysts looked at it closely, and it was very revealing.
It was, and I really enjoyed it because, I always talk about revenue, oh yeah, and more revenue, right? And so again, having alignment helps you drive revenue. Being focused on the customer helps you drive revenue, right? And that is just the theme that keeps repeating over and over. So this was a great segment for us to focus on and for us to pull out in the report.
And it's really, Dr. Debbie, one last thing I'll say before we move on to the next one was, a lot of times what we see is professionals use some of these data points in their presentations to the executive team. And so, this is really, we talked about predictability. And so when you can look and say, other companies are doing this and these are the results, it's a great argument.
And, and it's also a great way to use the study, right? If you're, a lot of times we see in organizations, somebody at a mid-level really understands that things need to happen differently, right? It could be at any level. And then to be able to build your business case for why you need to do something different, this entire report is just chock full of data points that you can use to build that business case.
That's right.
Okay, let's go to the next slide. All right, key finding number one, alignment. And yes, we have already talked about alignment. And, and the same question we ask you, we ask in the study. We said, how aligned are the efforts, strategies, and goals of marketing, sales, and customer success in your organization? Now, we have this broken down by group, so you can also see that. So let's go to the bottom to the fully aligned, right? And it's interesting that marketing, 36%, of the fully aligned, that 36% was from marketing, 32% was from sales, and 21% was from customer service. So again, it's interesting to see how even though it's a higher level of alignment, it's also still a little bit different in people's heads or in their perceptions based on the function they are in the organization. What would you add to that, Todd?
Yes, well, two quick things. When you put that fully aligned all together, that's 29%. I think our audience today said 33%.
Yes.
That they were, so that was all pretty close. So it sounds like we're, probably speaking to a very similar audience that took the study. And I thought from this, Dr. Debbie, that was interesting was that customer success feels a little bit behind the curve on alignment than marketing and sales. And that does not surprise me a whole lot since we've emphasized over the years marketing and sales alignment. Mm-hmm. But I feel like the customer success teams have been like maybe last invited to the party. And you can see that here.
I would agree. And again, as a RevOps organization, your whole world is based on the holistic customer journey, right? There's no beginning and an end. It's just we use a loop to talk about that, an infinity loop. And customer success team is critical in satisfaction levels and in that next purchase, right? And so you're right. We've seen a lot of focus on sales and marketing alignment, but few companies actually have sales, marketing, and customer success all thinking about that customer journey and their role in it and how they need to work together to optimize that journey. So I think that's a good key finding from the study. Anything else on this, Todd?
The only other thing I would say is, typically when we look at things and say, like, for example, in this case, fully aligned, we also know that the reality is there's always areas to improve, right? So even though you say, we're fully aligned, I think as you start, if it's an onion and start peeling the layers, you find that there's areas that you can continue to align and find ways to, marketers especially love to use the word optimization, right? Mm-hmm. There's always ways you can optimize the process and improve the alignment.
Totally agree with that. Totally agree. The question we did not ask was about their org structure. So we did not ask if this was casual collaboration, some kind of intentional collaboration, or if they had reorganized as a single RevOps organization. So we're just letting them interpret what fully aligned means here.
But that might be a little teaser for the next time we do a study, right?
I agree. I think it would be. Yeah, I think it would be. Okay. Next slide. So, Todd, why don't you talk about this one, because you had already started talking about that 29%.
Sure. This is a really important data point. And, one of the reasons, Dr. Debbie, that I can always see like what really resonates, like, for example, one of a large media company called Toolbox did an article last week regarding this topic or regarding this data point. And I think it just shows, it points out the fact that 29% said they were fully aligned, yet 69% were working toward full alignment. Mm-hmm. So, that was encouraging. That really shows that, there's this acknowledgement and desire to, move it toward alignment. I think bringing in customer success is probably one of those things that maybe has 69% in working on it, and as compared to a larger percent who say they're fully aligned because they're still trying to bring in the customer success team and figure out how that's going to work.
Right. But, or just improve everything, make everything better. And then I also think that the 3 stats at the bottom, why does that matter? I think those are really critical too. You want to talk about those findings?
Yeah, one of the things we always try to find out here, like we're trying to find out was, so if you're misaligned, if you don't have full alignment, how is that impacting your organization? So, here there was 3 really clear areas. One was missed opportunities for revenue, wasted time, and poor customer experience. And these were like almost bam, 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 1, 2, 3, way above all the other ones. And those are those are huge, right? Because we just said about everybody, like the holy grail for teams right now is improving customer experience. So it's really hard to do that if you're not aligned. Wasted time. I think we're seeing that, obviously that also ties with the aspect of right now it's hard to get new employees and the whole talent issue. So wasted time. Who has time to waste? Nobody does. And then obviously missed revenue opportunities. That's where the rubber meets the road, right? It's hard to hit your goals if you're missing clear revenue opportunities. Very practical. All three were very practical.
And I think it's interesting because, again, there are many studies that talk about alignment, but in this study, the alignment is of the three major customer-facing parts of the organization: sales, marketing, and customer success, right? And so I think that, thinking about those three operations organizations and how if they work together in some more consistent, predictable way, the impact it could make on the business. So I think those numbers are pretty important. Okay.
That's right.
Let's go to the next slide. So Todd and I had a great time with this slide. I know it's a bit of an eye chart, but it was great to kind of tease this apart and see what it meant. It's benefits of alignment by function. And it speaks a little bit to the prior slide, but it takes us into a little bit more detail. It shows us a little more about how the marketing, sales, and customer success perspective on that is a little bit different. So Todd, why don't you talk us through a couple of key points from this slide?
Yes, this does really highlight the uniqueness of this study, because we show the overall, but then we break it out by the three different groups that we surveyed. And when I look at this, to me, this is a thinking tool. So you look at it and you try to think about, like, well, how are things prioritized, but how are they different from each group? And so when we first got this and put it out in this chart format, it started making me think, like, so for example, I like to look at the differences, like where there's a large gap between groups. So you can see, for example, improving conversion success rate. Marketing said 47%, customer success 35%. Part of that may be, marketing tends to think in terms like conversion and success rate, but I mean customer success should have that same perspective, because what they're doing
absolutely
totally improves.
They are the ones that are creating that relationship with the customer post the sale, and they should absolutely be thinking about that is where your best business comes from, right? Is repeat, and customer success should be thinking about that. So I think that's a great key point. What else?
The other one, just two down, and then I'm going to jump up to data, but let's look at improving the employee experience. So here was an area where, for example, I think customer success, they saw this whole aspect of alignment of how it improves the employee experience, how it makes the employees feel when you're part of the team and you're all in the same team and you're working together, rowing the same direction, whatever metaphor you want to use to describe this, they understand it. You can kind of see, like, for example, marketing doesn't quite put the value on employee experience as much as,
or maybe they don't feel as much pain around that right now, right? I think a lot of times customer success teams, it all rolls downhill to the customer success team, right? So they would be huge beneficiaries of improved alignment in the organization. So I also thought that one was pretty telling. And then what about your comments around data?
Well, data is right there, the number three. And looking at this, it really reminds us that, without the data, it's really hard to do all these things. So you can see that everybody had marketing was a little bit higher, but everybody had a pretty strong value placement on data. And if you don't have the data right, it's really hard to improve customer experience.
Right.
And I believe it causes a lot of frustration. It can be frustration with the other team saying like, well, why am I getting all these demands on, how I put my data into the systems and, having all these QC processes. They don't see the value maybe in it, or they're not explained. But, if you don't have the data right, over and over and over we see, and Dr. Debbie, I'm sure you talk to people all the time, that this can be a source of great frustration.
Especially when you're working across functions, having one central truth of data and having common access to that data is absolutely essential. Okay. Well, let's keep moving and let's go to our next key benefit area or key finding area that Todd and I wanted to talk about. And maybe you're thinking employee experience, Debbie, Todd, what are y'all kind of talking about there? But employee experience, especially in the tech industry, it's important in every industry, right? But especially in the tech industry, making sure that people have fulfilling careers is extremely important. And it's a way to get and keep employees, for a long time. And so let's take a look at challenges with employee experience. And so the question that we asked was, what are the top challenges to successful talent acquisition, development, and retention at your firm? Now, across all companies, all responses, number one was budget, number two was a poor employee experience, and number three was lack of understanding of new skills. And then you kind of go down from there. And it was interesting. Those are the kinds of things that I'm sure everybody on the phone listening in has heard about, right? These are things that you're probably experiencing yourself. However, let's go to the next slide. In the high growth companies, it wasn't about budget constraints. It wasn't about poor employee experience, and it wasn't about lack of understanding of new skills. It was about remote office employees was their number one challenge. Very, very different from those companies that aren't growing as fast. And what we see, especially, when you're thinking about RevOps and you're thinking about people who work in RevOps, marketing ops, sales ops, customer success ops, people who work in those organizations, they want successful careers. And being in a company that has the right technology, that offers new opportunities to, stretch your wings out and play with new technology, that makes a business difference, that is what people are looking for. So in those companies that are high growth, they've already figured out a lot of these issues. It was just, I was a little surprised at this finding. What about you, Todd?
Yeah, well, this is like one of those really interesting ones where, when you start looking at these segmentations, you're like, oh, okay, so these growth companies really see the ability to make the remote employee situation work. That it's a differentiator, right? They not only probably allow, make it available, but they make it so that they still have alignment. They're having the ability to, have the proper engagement, making them feel part of the team, giving them the skills they need to be successful. And, the overall result is they're exceeding their revenue goals. They're exceeding
That's exactly right.
And so
I just was stunned by that finding. I shouldn't have been. If you think about those companies, and again, we have at TPG worked with many RevOps organizations, either helping them build those organizations or helping them improve what they're doing, and they operate very, very differently from not having a RevOps organization. So perhaps I shouldn't have been surprised, but I was very surprised by this one. It really does kind of tell you they cracked the code on this talent war that's going on right now in some ways.
Well, it's really interesting whenever the data supports your intuition.
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is. Okay, next slide. Let's go. Let's keep going. All righty. So Todd, what have we learned from the aligned?
Sure. So, this question here, what was the level of satisfaction with the overall talent acquisition, development, and retention of your firm? You see here that the overall group was only 16% extremely satisfied. But when you look at the ones that are fully aligned, that number jumps, and I use the word jumps, to 45%.
Yeah.
And so again, it provides some very tangible data to support the why, why we're doing this, why we're making that extra investment or taking the time to improve alignment. Well, if you've been looking for the right employee or employees for the last 6 months, this would be very encouraging to you, right? To know that you're going to be able to hopefully keep and retain your employees. And it's you may not be able to throw the largest amount. I think like the largest amount of payment or salary or things, but alignment is your friend.
It is. It is.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think part of it is that again, whenever we go into a company, there's so much friction and so much frustration between these three functions within the company, and those companies that have broken down those walls so they have that alignment, it's just a much better working environment. It's an environment in which someone can be successful versus beating your head up against a wall and things not changing. So I think that was huge, and it's one of the reasons why we wanted to focus on employee experience as one of the key findings for today's webinar.
Yeah, I think alignment results in employees feeling valued.
I agree, and heard, and absolutely
Yes.
heard, absolutely. Okay, let's go to the next slide.
And Dr. Debbie, before you begin, I just want to say that we're going to do this section, and then we want to make sure that we reserve enough time for questions.
Sure, absolutely.
We'll finish out here.
Yep, yes, it will take me about a couple of minutes to go through this section. And really, the next slide is really important because, the last thing that we want to do is go into an organization and say, oh, you have to reorg. You have to take marketing ops, sales ops, and customer success ops, create one organization and have it report to the CRO or the COO. That would create absolute chaos in a lot of organizations. So, to create this RevOps capability, you don't necessarily need to do that. You do need something like a center of excellence to help you. And again, what we're finding in a lot of companies, there's legacy, they want to do things differently, but there's legacy thinking, there's legacy structures, and there's legacy systems. So rather than going all the way to the ultimate degree and saying we're going to reorg, think about doing an interim step, and that would be to create a center of excellence. And if we could go to the next slide. And I'm sure everybody in the call is familiar with a center of excellence. It's just it unites a team of high-functioning experts under a common business objective, serving various stakeholders through specific training, tools, and processes. It is a specialized group, and you can see all of the different benefits of a center of excellence. And you can take a look at that later. I want to go to the next slide. So, and it's not as hard to get started as you think it might be. If you're going to create a center of excellence, you need a charter, you need a strategic plan with goals and value delivered. You probably will be creating an organization that is a hub and spoke, right? But everybody stays reporting to who they're reporting to, and of course you need to have funding, right? And then the details of creating that COE is who will be a part of it, what's the role in it, what are the working relationships, how decisions are made, how priorities are set, create ground rules, and also some kind of meeting cadence. I've worked with many organizations who have created something like this, whether they call it a council or whether they call it a center of excellence, although a center of excellence has a little bit more responsibility. And I think this is a great way to say, we're not going to totally reorganize, but what we are going to do is we're going to get intentional about creating a RevOps capability in our organization, and this is the way that we do it. That's just in a nutshell, okay?
Excellent. Dr. Debbie, I want to go ahead and fast forward just a smidge to our questions. We are have about 15 minutes left, so want to be cognizant and respectful of everyone's time. And our first question is in, what does a day-to-day aligned life look like for a person in sales or marketing? So if they're aligned, take us through like what a day of that would be and how it would differ. How do typical tasks like, getting into the CRM or going to market, how do those things look different for the aligned marketing professional as opposed to those who are not?
That's a great question. And I love to do day in the life scenarios, especially when you're trying to build a business case for doing something different. And a day in the life when they're separate is they just don't ever think about each other and they make decisions completely independently. Why should I talk to marketing? Why should I talk to sales? This is me, this is my job, this is what I do, right? Versus if you're like, for example, if marketing's making a decision around a new piece of technology, well, let's talk to sales. What does sales have? Are they planning to do something? Do they have something that marketing might be able to use to solve the same kind of problem, right? And so you go from, and you've got to have that framework developed, right? So that when you make decisions around things, you're not making them in a vacuum, number one. You're making it based on what is best for the customer at that part of the journey, and then how does the technology and data support that? So you're thinking different every day when you go in. And again, I've seen this casual collaboration, CCC, casual collaboration crap be tried over and over and over, and I'm telling you right now, it is not working. It is not working. All kinds of reasons for that. It's probably going to be the topic of my next book. But when we find these companies who see the value of alignment, your day-to-day is different because you have a more global view within your organization. You have a more expansive view, and how you make decisions is very, very, very different. Does that help, Micah?
Absolutely. I love that you bring up collaboration because it's a great segue into our next question. Since sales and marketing alignment continues to be such a challenge for many enterprises, as we saw with our 67% number at the beginning of the webinar, how can they account for customer success as well?
They got to grow up. I don't know what else to say. These companies, you just can't keep doing business the same way you've been doing business for the last 20 years. That mentality and all of those things that get in the way of that, whether it's politics or structure, leadership, whatever it is, those companies who can't be agile enough to make those changes will fail. They will not be successful unless they have a corner on a market and they're the only place that somebody can go to buy a product, right? I can't say enough about this legacy thinking, right? And you just will not be able to continue to grow and compete in a digital world if you keep these silos up. And Todd, I know you've had many research projects in this area. What would you add to that?
Yeah, a couple of things. As that question came up, I first jumped right to lifetime value and retention. So, customer success, we're talking about revenue, growing revenue. And so many times marketing and sales can get so hyper-focused on new. And when you get aligned with customer success, they're going to dramatically help, especially when it comes into lifetime value and renewal, right? So increasing, the overall revenue you're getting from clients, keeping them longer. Marketing and sales needs to get out of sometimes like that hyper focus on the new and know that customer success is really going to help with that overall revenue growth.
And Todd, I would take it up a level. It's a crisis of leadership, because as a leader in an organization, from the CEO down, your number one job is to maximize shareholder value. That is your job as a leader in an organization. And if you don't know how to optimize the resources that you have on hand to optimize shareholder value, then you need to be fired, right? It really is a crisis of leadership. And in those companies that have successful RevOps organizations, I will tell you there's a common thread, and there was always a leader with a vision, always, 100% of the time. There was always a leader with a vision for how to do things differently. As organizations around the globe, we cannot continue to sit on our tushes and think that we can keep doing business as usual. It's a new world, and if you're going to compete effectively, you need to change. And so marketing and sales has a hard time aligning. Adding customer success is hard too, but you need to figure that out. And again, it begins up here.
And you have to be ahead of the curve. And that's why, you know, just to put a plug in for a sense too, but like research is really helpful.
Yes.
To chart the direction, right? Because anybody can look backward.
That's
and
right.
Do what they continue, but you can look at the studies of how quickly things change. You can look at your own career and see how quickly your industry's changed. And so if you're not forward thinking, and we put an emphasis on this conversation at the beginning about the movement toward the digital. And you can even see like the research that shows like a lot of the younger, like the millennials and other generations, they go through the process a lot longer, before they ever want to talk to sales.
That's right. That's exactly right.
So like you said, if you're going to be a dinosaur and keep doing the things you've done in the past, you're going to exclude customer success and you're going to lose. I mean, I don't know if there's any other way to put it.
100%.
You bring up a wonderful point about change, Todd, and that very much is the kind of the subject of the next question. So what does working toward full alignment look like kind of more at the team level? When things change and they're working toward alignment, would you say it's, and this is for both Dr. Debbie and Todd, but regular cross-functional team meetings, does it start with the center of excellence? Is it a matter of executive discussions happening at the highest level, and then it comes from the top on down? At the team level, what does that actually look like?
Well, number one, I think you have more informed teams. I mean, it is amazing to me that we're sitting here in 2022 and I can walk into a marketing organization and they still don't know what the hell their sales organization does, right? You can't live like that. Sales needs to understand marketing and customer success. Marketing needs to understand sales and customer success. Everybody needs to understand what everybody does, right? Now, you don't have to, know it in detail, but you have to be cognizant of it, and you have to understand their role in the customer journey, right? Everything begins and ends with having that customer journey. If you don't have a customer journey, and marketing, sales, and customer success all understands their role and how to optimize their engagement in that customer journey, then you will never have any teams working together, okay? So I think it has to do with, yes, these teams have to have more time to be working, planning cross-functionally, right? But the very first thing that has to happen is that you've got to have that customer journey. You've got to have everybody understanding their role in it. You've got to have the technology and data to support those roles in it. And then you have to have conversations around what's working and what's not working. And it must be at a cross-functional level. That's why whether it's a council or whether it's a center of excellence, provides you a structure, an intentional structure for driving those conversations and driving that understanding and driving the change that needs to happen.
Yeah, the battle's not between departments. The battle is winning the trust of the customer, right? And so that sometimes we fight the wrong battle. And if we're trying to improve the customer experience, it's understanding the customer. So it can be very directional with getting the teams together to figure out your ideal customer profiles, to have common goals amongst departments, and have success and failure as a team, and not as not by individual or department. So there's, I think, a very And that center of excellence can help set that up. So it's not just lip service, but it's true alignment.
And you're right, those goals across those different organizations have to be in alignment with one another. So if sales is only focused on net new and marketing is passing them, leads for current customers, or, only customer success is trying to grow customers. And so those goals do absolutely positively have to be aligned. That's a good point, Todd.
And at the end of the day, if all those fights between departments are kind of pointless if you're not serving the customer.
Right. I will say this. The good news is we had one piece of data. Everybody said customer success, customer experience was the number one thing they wanted to focus on. Everybody will agree that nothing's more important than the customer. That is your bonding agent. It is the only bonding agent that gets all three of those groups working together. So if you have a leader who can structure and drive that, that is how you succeed. Nothing else will bond those three organizations together, but they all have a power, they all have a focus and a conviction that customer experience is the number one thing that they need to do. So with that, they have the main ingredient for success, in my opinion.
Well, with that, we want to bring our proceedings to a close, and of course, thank both of our speakers again for their time today. It was a wonderful discussion. Thank you, Dr. Debbie, and thank you, Todd, for joining us. And thank you to all the participants on the webinar today. Thank you for your interaction and your absolutely wonderful questions. Again, we'll be sending the slides and recording out very shortly, within the next couple of days, so be on the lookout for that. And with that, we are bringing this webinar to a close. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.